Pick a move in the ring. You can hit me with the words you fling.
All right, it's the post-fight podcast. I'm your host, Nick Atkin. I'm back with John Hyun and Chris E.B. Guys, UFC Fight Night, Blaydes versus Volkov. A tale of two fights, the main event and the co-main event. You got Curtis Blaydes getting a unanimous decision against Alexander Volkov in what wasn't a great fight, but then you had an absolutely barnstorming co-main, didn't you? John, start us off with that. Yeah, excellent fight in the co-main. Josh Emmett with a decision over Shane Burgos. Absolute violence, wasn't it? Just crazy stuff.
Definitely some violence in there. Josh Emmett, he proved what a lot of people believe, that he is one of the elite featherweights in the division. He has a crazy skill set. It's not just all about power for him. You know, that was the big narrative going in about this fight, is that Josh Emmett holds power, and we know that. We just, in this fight, he proved that he also has a big heart, because he injured his knee. He hyperextended his knee in the first round, and then he just continued to stand and bang with Shane Burgos. He didn't even try to wrestle or nothing, maybe because the knee was pretty messed up, but he stood there and used a limited set of strikes that he had, and he switched, you know, his footing and just found the openings, and even knocked out Shane Burgos twice in the third round with some solid shots. But credit to Shane Burgos, man. He also proved a lot in this fight, even though he lost, that he can take the big shots and keep coming forward. He can strike with the best of them in the division, and he has a long future. He's only 28 years old, Burgos, and yeah, he's just gonna continue to rise. You know, it's just a speed bump, just like the Kattar fight, or Qatar or Kattar, whatever how you say his name. Just like that fight, speed bump. He's gonna come back stronger, beat a bunch of other guys, come back up and fight one of the top guys, just like Emmett. Emmett, he's a little bit more urgent in his career. He's 35 years old. He's got to get in and fight the best right now, because he doesn't have that much time left compared to like a Burgos, compared to a guy like him who has a couple more years left in his prime. And we don't even know if Burgos hit his prime yet, but we definitely know that Josh Emmett is in his prime, and he's, you know, take away the knee injury. Hopefully nothing's really damaged in the knee. He should come back within the next 6 months. You know what I mean? There's a lot of great matchups for him. He's focused on the top five. It's kind of seems like everybody's matched up. You got Holloway and Volkanovski. You got the Korean Zombie and Brian Ortega. Even Calvin Kattar, he's matched up with Dan Ige, Yair and Zabit. It's almost like Emmett is, if he can stay healthy, he can just be on standby for one of those fights and jump in where he can fit in, and I'll be all down for that. What do you think, Chris? What do you think Emmett goes from here? I mean, do you think he waits if his knee is all good?
Oh, if I was him, I'd definitely wait. He wants to fight someone ranked above him. There is no one really ranked above him that has any freedom at all to fight him. I think the best thing is to do is get that knee fixed, get any surgery you need, get fit, get healthy. I mean, everyone who's matched up against you is in a fight. I think that's 4 fights that they're matched up in anyway. There is a chance that someone doesn't make weight, someone pulls out, someone gets injured, and I'd just be ready. I mean, look, Shane Burgos, fantastic fighter, and we can all see that he has some potential. And it's just maybe a different training camp, a change here, a change there. But let's be honest with Josh Emmett and the stages in his career at 35 in the featherweight division. That's very, very old. So what I am saying to him is wait, fight someone ranked above you, ideally top 5, and try and get that title that way. Because Josh Emmett, we have to admit, he is the finished article. He's not massively going to change his game in the next 1 or 2 years or in between fights. This is how he's going to fight the rest of his career now. Shane Burgos definitely has the opportunity, though, to change his game, add new skills. I think you have to give him, he has one hell of a chin, because Emmett was landing some absolute bombs. I mean, I agree generally with all the judges' scorecards. I had the first and the last. I had the last round as a 10-8. So that's my only disagreement there.
So officially it was a 29-27, 29-28, 29-28. Fight of the night officially as well. no arguments there. Let's see what Josh said afterwards, because you guys touched on it. You know, he was so close a couple of years ago. He was ranked 4th in the world, wasn't he? He says, I had a small hiccup. I had to reset, restart, and work my way back up. I was right there before in the top 5. I was ranked number 4, 1 shot away from the title. I feel like I'm there right now. I feel like my next fight could be for a title eliminator, get a big win there, and then I'll fight for the title. That's what I'm gunning for. I want to fight one more time this year at least, and then really make a run at the title in early 2021, unless with the crazy pandemic and everything going on. Hard to disagree with him, John?
Yeah, it is. It is hard to disagree with him. Skill for skill, if Volkanovski's still the champion, if Volkanovski defeats Max Holloway once again, like most people think he will, and by the end of the year he's still champion, or at the beginning of next year, I only see 2 fighters in that top 5 or top 10 skill for skill, probably giving Volkanovski the most for his money, and that's Josh Emmett and the Korean Zombie. Both those guys possess serious knockout power, and they're all around great fighters. You know what I mean? It's not like they excel at everything. You know what I mean? It's not like Ortega. You know what I mean? Ortega, he seems like on the ground he's just really much better than a lot of guys in the division. And in the stand-up, he does show potential in the striking, and he does have some power, but it's not like the Zombie or Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett, he can wrestle, and I want to see Josh Emmett fight the Zombie, and I'm very confused why Calvin Kattar took the fight against Ige. I was thinking, like, if Emmett won this fight, they could have put if Emmett was healthy, they could have put Emmett against Calvin Kattar. I felt that is the explosion right there, and it will determine a lot in the division. But now we don't have that, and Ige's getting a huge opportunity. So Volkanovski's still the champ, Emmett or the Korean Zombie in the beginning of 2021. I feel like that's going to be a fight that we're going to see.
And Chris, I think Brett Okamoto said it on Twitter. Wouldn't it be great if every featherweight fight could be 5 rounds? Because it just seems like it's the perfect mix, isn't it? They're such entertaining fighters in this division.
So entertaining, so quick, so fast, such a good all-round skill set. And the thing is, they have a power, but they don't really have that one knockout power. There are obviously exceptions to the rule, but they can go at each other and get hit after hit on just mess with each other's brains. But it's absolutely fantastic for the fans. There was a lot of blood, and I think they both definitely deserve that fight of the night, and is definitely one of the fights of the year, probably going back to Jang and Joanna, probably the best fight since then. Absolutely fantastic. I think the big question we have to ask is, though, what went wrong in that main event today?
Yeah, let's get on to this. Okay. Curtis Blaydes beating Alexander Volkov by unanimous decision. To be fair, John, I think Curtis said before the fight, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to wrestle him for 25 minutes. Don't expect a stand-up war. He called it, didn't he?
He definitely called it, and everybody that knows about fighting, they knew that Curtis Blaydes was going to go out there and implement this game plan. It's not like he was going to go out there and get into a kickboxing match with Volkov, who is a world champion or former world champion. It played out great, man. Curtis Blaydes, he got to go 25 minutes for the first time. He was really gassed for the last couple rounds, but he still pulled it through and got Volkov to the ground. Volkov did have his moments in the stand-up, and he did show great takedown defense. And even Curtis, after the fight, he said that Volkov was much stronger in his hips and in his legs. It played out exactly how I felt. And really, I thought, like, if Curtis went to the ground, if he could get top position, he'll be able to rain down some strong elbows like he did in the Alistair fight. It didn't happen. He did have some elbows, but Volkov, he just was a lot better on his back, defending from getting hit with big shots than I expected. And it just played out like it did. Where does Curtis go from here? He's in the toughest position out of any fighter in any division, I feel.
Yes, it probably would be Derek Lewis or Olenek, right? The winner of that. Because, although he gets this win, he stays probably exactly where he is. Francis Ngannou did say on Twitter that Curtis Blaydes deserves a title shot, but, not before me. And then Ngannou's beaten him twice, pretty convincingly. So Yeah, Chris, where do you see Curtis Blaydes going after this?
Yeah, ideally it is that Derek Lewis fight. I mean, Derek Lewis has been thereabout. He's only really lost to top contenders. He has that boring, but he does have a win over Ngannou. And I think if he can get through Olenek, it is Curtis Blaydes versus Derek Lewis. And then I would assume that would pretty much be our number one contender after we have the championship fight and Ngannou. Because I feel they're going to be next in line straight after that. Whoever wins out of those three.
Yeah, here are the scores. Brought them up on screen. 49-46, 48-47, and 48-46. John, a bit strange thing of 48-47, isn't it?
Yeah, it is strange, but man, like scorecards is just like I don't really pay attention too much to that. You know what I mean? Like I've lost faith in judging to where it's like, you know, that decision was right or that decision was wrong. I don't really look into like what the scores are too much. I'm just looking at like the standings right now in the heavyweight division. You got DC at number 1, Francis at number 2, Blaydes at number 3, and Derek Lewis at number 4. Derek Lewis is going to fight, like you guys said, Olenek, and that makes no sense at all because Olenek is ranked number 11. I say Curtis waits. You know what I mean? He waits and stays on standby like Francis is for the title fight because you never know what can happen in the next couple of months and then things can get shuffled around. Yeah, it's not like he's gonna fight Overeem. Rosenstrike is number 6. He's matched up with Dos Santos, who's number 5. Overeem is at number 8. They're not gonna fight their teammates. And you got number 9, Walt Harris. None of those fights make any sense for him.
Augusto Sakai is maybe the only one that makes some sense. Fairly good record. That's the only one really that jumps out. Is like if you want to keep yourself busy, probably Augusto Sakai is not too much risk, but with a good enough reward of getting another win on that record. That's the only thing. That's the one that would stand out to me would be Augusto Sakai.
Okay, I think what was said after the fight was probably more interesting than the fight itself. Dana White was talking some smack about Curtis Blaydes, wasn't he? Let's take a little look at that. Shared courtesy of Helen Yu, who's there in Vegas. I'll just play this, what Dana said.
Well, his 2 losses to the Francis. How do you give him the title fight over Francis? But yeah, he would be considered next to mine. With his performance tonight and his cardio, I wouldn't wait around if I was him. I'd stay active. I'd stay busy. You know, I like Curtis Blaydes, but Curtis Blaydes has the wrong attitude as far as I'm concerned. You know, I don't have anything against the kid at all. You just, you know, when you talk shit like he talked this week, man, you better come in and whoop somebody's ass when you talk shit like that. When you talk the shit that he talked and perform like he performed tonight, you look stupid.
Okay, I'll get to Curtis's response in a bit. But Chris, yeah, what do you make of Dana's comments there?
I think it is fair because I know John doesn't like the scorecards, but I did have the first 3 for Curtis, and then I had the last 2 for Volkov, and I actually thought that's actually what kind of ruined the fight and actually made it entertaining because we had 3 pretty one-sided rounds followed by 2 pretty one-sided rounds where I felt Curtis felt he'd won the first 3 rounds maybe with a 10-8 thrown in there, and he did gas out, and the last 2 rounds was a terrible performance. And I mean, some people who judge the whole fight, they always say, if no one's obviously won by the time allotted, you think if this fight continued, who do you think would win? And I think if they would have kept fighting for the next 20 minutes, actually, I think Volkov would have actually won in a street fight from that point onwards. So I do get where Dana's coming from. I think it is slightly disrespectful after just being a main event. I think sometimes you could let it calm down or just say it wasn't the most exciting fight. But he has kind of ripped into him there and attacked his cardio. And really, we don't know what fighters are going through, what limitations he's had with the coronavirus. I mean, fighters are going out of their way to fight without the best possible training camps they could have had going into a fight. So I do think that's to be a little bit of leeway.
And it seems like a lot of Dana's anger there is maybe coming from what Curtis said about fighter pay, because Curtis was saying, don't pull the wool over our eyes. I'm paraphrasing there, but John, do you think that's why Dana's so upset?
Oh, of course. You know, Dana is showing his sensitive side in this post-fight interview, and it's always good to see it. And yeah, it's just his little way of taking a jab at Curtis. And Curtis, before the fight, he was speaking the truth on many different levels, and he went in there and he fought us, his ass off, and that was the result. I mean, not every fight you're gonna go in there and get a first round or second round finish. It's not going to play out like you expected. But a win is a win. You know what I mean? And Dana is very selective of that. Like, some guy could go fight like that and win, but if he likes him and if he didn't say anything negative towards the company, then he would be having a lot of praise for that fighter and talking about how they could slide into the title fight or whatever. You know what I mean? But he's going to, poke at the bear as much as he can to kind of like shift the perspective of Curtis. But Curtis won the fight, and there's no denying that. But could he had a better performance? Yeah, of course, every fighter can. And yeah, it's just emotions. What do you think, Chris? You think he's emotional?
I think he's been a bit emotional. I mean, we all know Dana. He's a little bit of a big baby. When he gets pissed off, he likes to throw everything out the pram. So, yeah, I understand where he's coming from. I just think respect the fighters. One, you're not respecting them with their pay. After they've just done a main event for you, their bloody mouth, their eyes swollen. Is it time to really rip into someone who's just made you a fortune? I don't know.
Let's see what Curtis said in response to Dana in the press conference afterwards. I'll bring it up on screen here. Thanks again, Helen Yu, with the video. Let me press play on this. I'll rewind to the beginning first. Okay.
I have fought Justin Willis, ranked below me. I fought Abrahimov, ranked below me. I fought Junior, ranked below me. I fought Volkov, ranked below me. Like, what? No, I don't know, man. This is probably not the best time to answer the question, so I'm just gonna leave that alone.
All right, he seems annoyed, doesn't he, John?
Yeah. It's almost like the Josh Emmett situation. Josh Emmett just keeps fighting guys below him, and now after this win, he's kind of sick and tired of it, and he's ready for a guy above him. Curtis Blaydes, the same thing. Of course, we can't forget Curtis Blaydes did have his chances against Francis Ngannou, right? But they're heavyweights, man. Like, anybody can knock anybody out. I feel like we're gonna see the third fight eventually. In the future sometime between Blaydes and Ngannou, but it's not going to be very soon because Ngannou is going to fight for the title after DC and Stipe. But Blaydes, he's completely right. I mean, he should wait. He should wait and heal up, train, get better, and find the best opportunity. Not just take a fight against a guy ranked below him, especially way below him. Maybe he should wait until Rosenstrike and who's a Dos Santos fight, right? But he beat Dos Santos, so most likely he will be rooting for Rosenstrike to win that fight, which will rank Rosenstrike much higher, and maybe fight him if there's no option. Because taking out Rosenstrike would be huge for Curtis Blaydes. But other than that, man, he's very limited on options that make sense for him. There's a lot of options that make sense for the UFC for Curtis Blaydes, but for Curtis Blaydes, there's not many for him. What do you think, Chris? Do you see him waiting it out? Do you think that would be smart and go train? He's still pretty young in the division.
Yeah, I think the thing is this whole division's on hold. I think at least wait it out until we have Cormier versus Stipe, and then we know which way the division's going. Because pretty much after that fight, it's going to be Stipe versus Ngannou 2 anyway. It's almost a done deal. If DC wins, he retires. If Stipe wins, he's going to fight Ngannou. So we already know what's going to be the next fight for the belt after that. So if we put a end of the year date on it, maybe December, the Madison Square Garden card, if everything's back to normal by then. So it could be around that time. And then you'd think, I mean, it's heavyweights. They tend to take a lot of time out because they do take a lot of damage. So you're probably going to need a fight somewhere there. But I think, see who wins out of Stipe and Cormier. You're probably going to get Stipe versus Ngannou after that anyway. So it's not even like you can fight the loser. Because if Cormier loses, he's retired. If Stipe loses, he's probably going to fight for the belt again against Ngannou. So it's a really, really tough one.
Mark my words, DC is not going to retire. I don't think if he loses, I see him possibly retiring. If he wins, I see him not retiring. I see him defending the belt, and it's going to be against Francis. Or and then which could line up, you know what I mean, Stipe versus Blaydes. That would work perfect for Blaydes, you know what I mean, if DC wins and he doesn't retire. And I feel like he's not going to. He's a competitor, man, and wearing that strap and being the world champion at heavyweight, that's a dangerous drug, you know what I mean? And if he takes that drug, he could continue with that.
Do you think, in terms of money for the UFC and to pay the fighters, you think there would be higher fighter pay and higher revenue for Cormier versus John Jones 3 at heavyweight with all the bad blood? Or do you think Ngannou versus John Jones would do bigger numbers?
I look at John Jones versus DC3 would be more of
probably
a hit on pay-per-view than Ngannou, because Ngannou doesn't have that championship belt.
Yeah.
I mean, if he had the belt and John Jones went up to fight him for the title, then that's a massive fight. But DC Jones 3 is something that the non-casuals would want, and then the casuals could hop on board real quickly.
I feel the thing with DC is I think he's actually happy with his legacy in the sport. I think the Strikeforce Grand Prix, light heavyweight champion 2 times, heavyweight champion. I think what he is really looking for, actually, and as with most people, I think he doesn't care about his legacy at this point. But I think if there's one more big payday, he'll take it. I think it comes down to money with DC, no matter what he says.
All right, let's move back onto the card. We'll go here to Raquel Pennington. She beat Marion Renault unanimous decision. Yeah, John, start with you. Not the most exciting fight, or did you dig it?
Well, Raquel Pennington went out there and put on a good performance. You know what I mean? She looked like she got the fire back in her a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I felt from the performance. Like, Marion Renault, she looked like every bit of a 42, 43. Today she's 43 in the division. And Raquel Pennington, she's ranked number 6. And there's a reason why she's ranked number 6. And Marion Renault is ranked number 10. Pennington, she still has that fire to go up the division, and she proved that in this fight. Marion Renault, she's 43, like I said. I wonder how much she has left in the tank. You know what I mean? Every camp takes a lot out of you. And being that old, it's not helpful for her to, with her near future in this division. Raquel Pennington, who do you think she should fight next? Chris, you got
Raquel
Pennington at number 4.
Well, as I said, she is more than a gatekeeper. She is that security guard with the pit bull. She's absolutely fantastic fighter. She just loses to the best fighters. She loses to Nunes. She loses to Holm. She loses to the randomie. I think she's absolute class. She was oversized. She was absolutely fantastic in this fight. I disagree with 2 of the judges there. I think Pennington won all 3 rounds. I thought was dominant. I think she looked more athletic, more fit, much stronger in particular. And I think for Pennington, there's only really 2 names that jump out above her. The only people she hasn't fought that are above her, and that would be Aspen Ladd and Juliana Pena. I think both of them would be fantastic challenges. Pena's fantastic on the floor. And I just feel sorry for Pennington because she only loses to the very, very elite. But because some of the women's divisions are so thin, she's fought that elite many times over, I think she's lost 11-8. And I think 2 of them are against Holly Holm, 1 against Andrade, 1 against Nunes, 1 against Randomie. I mean, she has gone through murderers row. And that's why I have so much respect for her, because she proves that records don't really count. You actually have to look at the quality of opposition. And Juliana Pena, I think, would be fantastic. Aspen Ladd, I think, would be fantastic. Pena, you get the ground game versus the strike and the power of Raquel Pennington. And with Aspen Ladd, I think it could be power versus power in a good striking match.
Okay. Let's keep going, guys. Bilal Muhammad, another unanimous decision here, beating Lyman Good. An emotional night, wasn't it, really, for Lyman Good? I think he's revealed his father passed away actually in, was it fight week or very close to it? So I guess, hard for him. We had a similar situation, didn't we, with was it Cody Stamen and his brother passing away, and then he went out and put on a performance. But yeah, good win for Belal Muhammad, I guess, John.
Yeah, he's one of the dark horses coming up in that welterweight division. Right now, he's riding a 3-fight win streak against some good competitors. You know, Curtis Milliner, Takashi Sato, and now Lyman Good. He went in there and implemented a great game plan and landed more shots and I felt like he kind of dominated the fight. You know what I mean? Lyman Good didn't look like the old Lyman Good. You know, he landed some good shots. It's just that he couldn't get anything rolling. You know, he couldn't get the momentum to shift to it in his way. And Belal just kept that, you know, momentum and just kept going forward and you know, overcame you know, some rough patches, but overall did a great job. I feel like Muhammad, he needs a step up in competition. You know, Lyman Good was a good step up, but he needs another major step up. And he's right at the edge of the top 15. I feel like a good fight for him would be a Robbie Lawler, a guy that's coming off a loss, and he's still sitting in the top 15. And it's a great matchup, and it will prove a lot about Muhammad to see if he's a guy that we could see, you know, running for that title if he can go in there and take out Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, I think Robbie Lawler's the best fight for him. I mean, I think his only 2 losses in the UFC are against Jeff Neal and Vincent Luque. Robbie Lawler's right in between those two. I mean, he's got to be the best fighter outside of the top 15 ranked. I think it would be fantastic for him. I love Belal Muhammad. I love his fighting style. A little bit of an issue with his gas maybe in the last round, but apart from that, I thought it was a really, really fantastic fight. Really entertaining.
Also, before this fight, he made some changes, and it was noticeable. You know, he went down to Fortis MMA in Dallas, Texas, and actually trained with Jeff Neal for this fight. You know, Jeff Neal, you mentioned him. He beat Muhammad in his last fight. That was his last loss. So Muhammad did call out Ponzinibbio, and he wanted to fight Ponzinibbio. I feel Ponzinibbio is too high ranked for Muhammad. It's good to punch up, but it's not realistic for Muhammad. Ponzinibbio is going to come back and fight somebody in the top 10. He has to. You know, he's a big threat in that division, and he's been sitting out for a while, but still, when he comes back, he should get a big fight. But Muhammad, man, you could even put him against just for fun. You could even put him against since he has that loss to Vicente Luque, I say put him against Nico Price just for fun. You know, for making sense, you got to put him against Robbie Lawler. You know what I mean? That's the only thing that makes sense for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Final fight on the main card, the opener here. Jim Miller. John, you called it. Jim Miller defeating Roosevelt Roberts by armbar in the first round at 225. Impressive stuff from Jim. But Chris, maybe this is proving Roosevelt Roberts just isn't that level that they want him to be at.
See, I really rate Roosevelt Roberts. I think he's a fantastic fighter, done fantastic on the regional circuit. And I said I think he's actually the better fighter. I think John maybe somewhat agrees with me that maybe he is the better fighter, but you can't fight 3 weeks, 4 weeks later. It's not a proper training camp. There's not enough time to go through all the videos, study who you're fighting. I mean, Jim Miller, you have one advantage. There's a whole lot of video on him for the amount of time he's been around. But I think it was just, maybe he wants the money, maybe it's the rush, but I think even if you're going to fight regularly, you're best to wait at least 2 months, have at least an 8-week camp. I think he's just cutting himself short. Last time he fought was in Jacksonville, this time in Las Vegas. And to me, I'm not sure if the preparation was right. I thought it was actually just a terrible performance by Roosevelt Roberts. It actually showed a lack of fight IQ.
John, I imagine you agree.
Yeah, Roosevelt Roberts, man, he's a talent. It's just that on paper, it looked like he had a lot of advantages, but in reality, when you step into that cage, that experience, you know, of fighting in that octagon and knowing where you are and being in so many different positions in the past against the highest level of talent that you could face, it worked for Jim Miller in that fight, you know what I mean? Because he was on his back for a while and Roosevelt Roberts just stayed there, you know what I mean? Like, why didn't you just get back up and strike with him? You know, he had that option, but he didn't. And look what happened. he got his arm caught and got that submission faster than I expected. I didn't expect that fight to end in the first round, but it did. And Jim Miller got up and dusted himself off and just looked like his vintage self. You know, it's weird about Jim Miller because it almost like he's performing at the same level he did 5-6 years ago. And it's weird. It's weird to watch. I don't know if the weird is the perfect word for that, but it's spectacular to watch. That's a better phrasing. Spectacular to watch somebody be able to perform 6 years later at the same level against a different caliber of fighter. You know what I mean? And Jim Miller, he's a guy, man. I don't think a lot of guys would want to fight right now because it's just like you don't know what you're gonna get out of him. But yeah, man, I'm proud that Jim Miller, you know, proved me right though.
All right, I'll run through these prelim results and then we'll pick out a couple to talk about. First, Bobby Green, unanimous decision against Clay Guida. Tisha Torres, unanimous decision against Brianna Van Buren. Marc-Andre Barrio with a TKO over Oscar Piachota. A nice uppercut there and ground and pound. Jillian Robertson with a rear naked choke to submit Courtney Casey. Justin Jaynes with TKO to beat Frank Camacho. Lauren Murphy, unanimous decision against Roxanne Modafferi. And this one, Austin Hubbard beating Max Rohskopf. I guess we can talk about that because this was interesting. Max said 9 times on his stool, call the fight, call it. Coach tried to keep him in it, convince him. It goes back, we've seen it a lot lately, haven't we, guys? John, this is an issue that's not going away, of corners needing to step up and make the decision. I mean, he was telling him, I want to go, and he even tried to keep Max going. It was just ludicrous, wasn't it?
Yeah. The bright lights are so focused on the corners now. You know, it's just the floodlights. You know what I mean? You ever seen those floodlights that they turn on in the movies where they're like, and then the lights come on? That's what it is like for these coaches now, man. You got to be very, very careful of what you say and what kind of game plan you're implementing for these fighters in the corner and what kind of information you're relating to them. And in this one, it was just, you know, you don't know, you know what I mean? Like I talked to, a couple coaches about this topic, and they're saying, like, you don't know the relationship the fighter has with the coach. You know, it's like the coach, is he there to motivate you or is he there to game plan or express the game plan to you? There's 2 different types of coaching in the corner. You know what I mean? The fighter can know what to do. It's just they need that push, and you never know with Max. But Max did say, like you said, 9 times that he's done. You know what I mean? And I feel like if they're continually repeating that, then you gotta throw in that towel. You know, and
let me just bring that up.
Yeah,
we can watch the video here so everyone can see it. It's just after the second round.
We got this, champ.
Fall it.
Listen.
Fall it.
Huh?
Fall it.
You're gonna beat this guy, Max. We got this. You can beat this guy. Listen, no, listen.
Rob, call it.
No, we got this, Max. Okay? Stop it. We got this. Okay, breathe. Okay, catch your breath.
No.
We're gonna beat this guy.
Call it.
At our feet, you're gonna clinch.
No, call it. Call it.
You sure you're gonna lose, Max?
Yeah.
We got
I
this.
don't want to do this anymore.
No, we got this, Max.
No, I don't.
You're a champion.
I don't have it.
You're a champion. Stop it.
I don't have it.
Stop it. You're a champion. You're a champion. We're gonna finish this round on top of it under the precision. Okay? Get on top of him. Out wrestle him. We got this.
Let's go. One good right here. You can't. You want to fight or no?
He wants to call it.
He wants to call it.
All right. Yeah, pretty crazy, huh, Chris?
I think it's a very sad indictment for his managers, a sad indictment for his coaches. I think, look, this is a guy who's only had 5 fights in mixed martial arts. He's 25. He's just come through. And, okay, maybe you want to try and motivate him a bit. But the problem is now, especially in this time where we can hear everything, this is going to follow him for the rest of his career. And the problem is, I think, like, that actual emotional heartbreak, what was going on in that fight, with him just being absolutely pounded, I think this could affect him for the rest of his career. I hope it does not. But I think they should have intervened, because sometimes it's better to save your fighter to fight another day.
Let's have a quick look. Sorry. Just what the coach said. He spoke to Ariel Helwani, I'm gonna try and bring it up on screen. Okay, yeah. Robert Drysdale spoke to Ario. He said, "I stand by what I did. I expect excellence from the people I train because I love them. Max Rohskopf wasn't seriously hurt, and I felt he needed a mental push. I would expect the same from my coach." John, what's your take on that?
I believe what he said. You know, Robert Drysdale, he's an excellent coach. He's been coaching for a long time. He's fought in the UFC. He's been one of the highest level jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world for a long time. And if he feels like Max, someone that he's very close to, that he's trained for a long time, needs that mental push, I believe him. You know what I mean? Maybe Max was exhausted and well, he looked very exhausted. And and he wanted to quit. But you know, going back to what Chris said, that this could follow him for the rest of his career. It could, but it couldn't. You know what I mean? You got to know the backstory of Max. He's been through so much in his life outside of fighting that I don't think he's going to quit. You know what I mean? This is something that's just going to be a speed bump. We're going to forget about this in about a few weeks when UFC 251 rolls around. We're not even think about this. Like, think about Max or whatever happened in his corner. I don't think it's going to follow him until he runs into somebody that he's going to fight, and they're going to bring it back up later on. And that's some fuel for a future opponent. But just like earlier tonight, we saw Raquel Pennington, who quit in her corner too, and she comes back and beats Marion Renault, a ranked girl, and looked better than ever. So for Max, I think he's still young, and this is just the speed bump, because you never know with a loss. You know what I mean? This is his first loss of his career, and he could go on a extremely incredible run from this point on. We just don't know.
Of course, but my only disagreement is, look at the quality of opponent that Raquel Pennington was facing. That quality of opponent was somewhere up here, while Max's opponent is somewhere down here. So it's, to everyone who's actually just listening to this, I pointed up and I pointed down. But yeah, it was, I don't know. Not sure if the coaches should have just pulled it earlier, because he obviously did not want to fight on at all. Or they would have been better of just stopped speaking to him, tended to him, and then he would have known if he wanted to get up himself. I think if you're not going to make the decision, you should let the fighter make the decision and stop pushing him. After 3 times, you should just keep telling him maybe tactics or whatnot, and then you should have just left him, because he wouldn't have got up his stool anyway, I think.
I don't feel like the caliber of fighter that you lose to really matters, because at the end of the day, you lost and you quit. And it doesn't really matter who you lost to and who you quit against. It's just getting over that mental, hump. And I feel Max, he's going to be able to do it, I mean, just like most other fighters do. Because there's a lot of fighters that gave up during their amateur career, and they come back and become incredible pros. And even guys that fight outside of the UFC before they even get in there, they have had terrible performances and traumatic injuries, and they all come back, and make it to the big time. So I'm being more optimistic about it, because I feel like Max is a talent, and he has great skill set. And you got to give credit to Austin too. He took this fight on 5 days notice himself. He actually took a fight on 2 weeks notice for another opponent. That opponent gets the coronavirus, or no, they didn't get the coronavirus, but their corner had the coronavirus. And that's a whole nother story, because his corner was actually fought a couple weeks back. But and he took this new opponent, went in there and fought a good fight, and basically made Max quit, and big up to Austin Hubbard for that. But going back to Max, he'll be back. Hopefully the UFC brings him back. Hopefully they don't say like, "Oh, you quit on the stool," and that's a whole nother level of this story. Will the UFC bring him back after he quit on the stool? Do you think that would be a major beep move by the UFC if they don't bring him back, Chris?
I think it's totally probably within their rights. I mean, he's 25. Really? He should have been Contender Series. Maybe he's not ready for the UFC. And I mean, there's absolutely no problem to go away and go to Titan or another smaller promotion and go and have 2 or 3 fights and then go back to the UFC. I think it's probably best. I can't remember the last fighter to go into the UFC with only 5 professional fights.
There's been a few. Justin Tafa. He only had like 4 fights, and he debuted in that big like record-breaking Melbourne card.
Yeah. I mean,
in
Kimbo had
Australia.
what, 3 or 4?
Yeah, exactly. You know,
there are
it's
occasions.
not nothing new. Yeah.
There are oddities, but it's very, very rare. And I just think maybe a little run in Titan, FFC, just 2 or 3 fights, have 2 or 3 fights there, and come back. Come back, because you're always welcome back. But
that's actually,
I think learn your trade.
Yeah, it brings up a good point. I was talking with somebody else about this, like last week or so. I don't even know. Maybe we're talking about it on here, but like the UFC doing like, you know, like sending fighters to the regional promotions and getting a couple wins and building their career back up a little bit, and then coming back to the UFC, but not actually cutting them and doing it, just like loaning them. You know, like in soccer. You know, soccer, they loan players to other teams. Yeah. And, you know, like they've done trades before. Why don't they do that in MMA? Why don't they do that in the UFC, where you got a guy like you said, Max, maybe he needs to go build his confidence again somewhere else, but don't cut him. Just loan him to a Titan or loan him to like a LFA, where a lot of these prospects come from, and let him fight a couple times and maybe even just have him fight on a Contender Series in August. Yeah. I mean, maybe next year or whatever.
There's many fights. I mean, I'm a big fan of Pico over in Bellator. Pico, fantastic fighter, but just sometimes it's too early to be in one of those big promotions. To me, I get the soccer analogy. Sometimes it's like golf. With golf, it's all about when you go professional from an amateur, because you want to do it at the right timing. And I think joining the UFC, it's all about the right timing, because ideally you want to go in and go on a decent streak and win 4 out of your first 5, rather than still be learning in the UFC. Because when you're still learning in the UFC, that's when you end up with this mishmashy record that some people who joined the UFC really young, like a Masvidal or a Nate Diaz, where they have double-digit losses, but that doesn't tell the whole truth. They were still learning in the UFC.
Yeah, when I was younger, that's the reason why I didn't turn pro as a golfer, is because the timing wasn't right. So that's why it led me to this career path over here. So, you know how it works sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
John, I have to give you a straight red card for calling football soccer on this show. And Chris,
all right. It's just a little
sent off, man.
Bad habits. I'm sorry. Football. It happens in football all the time. It happens in Major League Baseball all the time. They send, players to the minor leagues. I wish the UFC would do that, because Chris made a good point. You know, you get a lot of guys that are maybe not 100% ready for the big leagues and kind of just get pushed out there, and then they have 2 or 3 fights, and next you know they're washed out from the UFC, and then the UFC never will probably sign them again, even though they go out to regional promotions. Before that even happens, why not let them go after 1 fight? It doesn't look like they're ready. Have a few fights outside the UFC, come back with no, like, really with no pressure. You know what I mean? There's pressure, but there's no pressure of a contract hanging over their heads. You know, your contract is already there. You just need to go out and get a couple wins, or you know, even if you lose, you could still get a couple more wins, you know, and come back.
I mean, even you look at one point at Ben Askren, I mean, he literally going to Bellator and going to one and building that record up. He might have joined the UFC a little bit too late, but you look at, for that brief amount of time he was active in the UFC, he was a huge star. He was on Ariel Helwani every month doing interviews. His Twitter exploded from something like 80,000 followers to like 500,000. And it does just so, like, sometimes you've got to get good outside the bright lights of being watched every game. You know, if you look at collegiate sports in America, you are built up from high school. You might play in front of 5,000, 10,000 people. Then you go to college and you play a slightly higher level. Then you'll get into the first team in college, and then you know, there's a certain progression to it. It's the same thing that they have in boxing through amateur boxing. You go to an amateur boxing fight, you can go and see people who are going to become great boxers, and there's maybe 100 people in the stadium, because you have to build them up slowly. I mean, you look at some boxers' amateur boxing careers, they have like 300 amateur fights and then 50 professional fights, while I think Max has 2 amateur fights, 5 professional fights, and he's like straight into the major leagues. It's quite a big jump.
Sink or swim. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like Nevada State Athletic Commission is going to probe this situation too.
I laugh at that.
Corner's refusal to.
I laugh at that. Like, what are you probing? Come on. What are you gonna put a penalty on the coach? Is that what you're gonna do? Like, Nevada, what are you gonna do? Like, just stop lying and saying you're gonna probe it. It's just like you're gonna fine some people. Come on, you're gonna take money from people for like making a decision. That's stupid. You know what I mean? Like, what exactly are they gonna do? You know, to benefit this situation? Nothing. So they should just keep their mouth shut. I'm tired of the athletic commissions. Number one, judging is terrible. A lot of the rules are terrible. They should change a lot of the rules. No commission is following the same rule set as other commissions. It's like, you get tired of that after a while, right? Just like, oh, we're gonna promote it like you're some important entity that everybody cares about. You're just money hungry people.
Well, his NSAC executive director, Bob Bennett, he told this to ESPN. That's something we will take a look at. We might want to take disciplinary action on them. That doesn't sound like they are looking out for a fighter. Obviously, he didn't want to come out and fight. Brian Butler, Rohskopf's manager, also told ESPN a little update on Max's condition. Said he suffered from fatigue due to the short notice weight cut and pre-existing turf toe. Make of that what you will. I think we better just quickly move on because, yeah, John, I know you wanted to also talk about, was it Gillian Robertson or Lauren Murphy's win?
Yeah. Lauren Murphy versus Roxanne Modafferi. I felt like this was an important fight. If you look at them in the rankings right now before the fight, Roxanne Modafferi was at number 6. Lauren Murphy is at number 7. Very, very close in the rankings. Lauren Murphy goes in there, gets the unanimous decision. Now you look at her and say, okay, she's on a 3-fight winning streak, I believe. And during this winning streak, she has beaten a couple decent names, and you got Andrea Lee, and then you got Mara Romero Borella. And now you got Roxanne Modafferi. She calls out, what's her name? Cynthia Calvillo after the fight. That would be okay. But I feel like there's other fights that she could take that are higher ranking opponents. I think the Jessica Ai fight makes more sense. Jessica Ai, she's coming off a loss. I feel like Cynthia's gonna fight somebody higher ranked. I think Cynthia's probably gonna fight Katlyn Chookagian. Katlyn Chookagian is number 1. Cynthia's number 2. Joanne's number 3. She's gonna fight Shevchenko most likely, and then you got Ai at number 4, and then you got Jennifer Maia at number 5 and Roxanne at number 6. So probably by Monday or Tuesday, Lauren Murphy will probably be sitting at number 6. I feel like she should fight Jessica Ai sitting at number 4. That's a great matchup. What do you think about Roxanne Modafferi? She's coming off a loss, Chris. Where would you put her? Who would you rank, face her off against next?
Roxanne Modafferi, it's really, really hard. I think if she's probably going to fight anyone, maybe I'm showing a little bit of bias, but I wouldn't mind Macy Barber. I think that would be the perfect fight.
Beat Macy Barber.
Well, I mean, look, there's not too many women in the division. There's no one really that stands out. I mean, Modafferi's had a bit of a stop-start career. She doesn't get a lot of wins in a row, so I have really no idea.
Putting Chris on.
If you look at the rankings, I would put her against somebody that's still ranked but below her, right? Because she's coming off a loss. Yeah. Maybe Alexis Davis. I don't think she's fought Alexis Davis yet, or Andrea Lee maybe. Then we gotta look her up a little bit. Okay, so she lost to Maya, who's ranked higher. She lost to Sarge Eubanks twice. She's lost to Nico Montana. Yeah, so she hasn't faced off against Andrea Lee, who's ranked number 9, or even Alexis Davis, who's ranked number 11. Montana De La Rosa is number 12. I can see that fight happening.
She fought Andrea Lee
already?
Yeah, in Invictus, she beat her.
Oh, well, not in the UFC.
Not in the UFC, yeah. She beat her in Invictus, I think.
So she did beat Andrea Lee, but it was a split decision, a close fight. That was 2014. So I feel like if you want to run it back, they have some history. Why not do it? I mean, her, like I said earlier, what is it? Montana De La Rosa is there at number 12. Alexis Davis at number 11. Those should probably be the 3 options for Roxanne Modafferi. And one thing crazy about Roxanne is that even though she lost this fight, she seems like she's getting better with age, and she's one of the oldest women on the roster. So let's see what happens with her, man. She's always an interesting character, like we talked about in the last podcast. So everybody's going to be wondering what's going to happen in the fights coming up for her.
All right. Anything else either of you wanted to talk about from the prelims? Chris, did anything catch your eye?
One fight in particular that I thought actually goes with the first fight off the main card is the Bobby Green, Clay Guida, and Roosevelt Roberts, Jim Miller. And I was thinking, Roosevelt Roberts, how me and John both rate him as a fighter. I think fighting one of these two would be the perfect next move in the lightweight division. I mean, Bobby Green, Clay Guida, probably not good enough technically anymore, either of them to get ranked. Very, very good gatekeepers. And I think this would actually be a fantastic fight for Roosevelt Roberts to fight one of these much more experienced guys and really find out how good he is. But this time, wait 3-4 months, have a proper training camp, and put all your skills on display.
All right, that about wraps it up then for the recap. We will be back. Is it next week? What's the next card? I'm so out of the loop.
Next card is a banger right there next week. It's going to be a sick card next week.
Fight night again. Oh, this is Poirier Hooker, right?
Yeah.
June 28th. All right, I'll just...
Mike Cherry, Mickey Go.
Yeah. I feel like this is going to be a much bigger card, right?
This is going to be a lot of traffic, for this Dustin Poirier, Dan Hooker fight. I've noticed a lot of interest. People are very excited for this main event. It's going to be a crazy fight. I feel like it's not going to be a fight that's going to be over quick, And we should be previewing it, right? Coming up this week sometime.
Yes, sir. I think whenever we can find some time next week, if you boys were happy to help me out, would love to
definitely
put together a preview. Yeah, sure thing. All right. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Cool. All right. Sounds good. Yeah, thanks again, John Hyunko and Chris Edwards-Bailey. Always appreciate it. Yeah, man. Go check out John on JHK MMA. Chris is there on ChrisEB_MMA. Nico SCMP. Give SCMP MMA a follow as well on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. I would say Instagram, but I really haven't updated our account for like a year, so maybe not. But yeah, I think John's a bit more active on Instagram, so follow him there, and Chris too. Anyway, yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you all again after a while. Cheers.
Hey guys, Sasha Platnikoff here, letting you know to tune in to SCMP Post-Fight for all your weekly martial arts news.